Hello, everyone. We are right at the top of the hour, and my name is Fennell, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I just want to thank John and Aaron, and I also want to thank my other guest here from Hell, Leonard, Danielle, for supporting this process today and inviting me to do this. The music you heard at the very beginning, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe this, but here it is. 11:30 this morning, my text message pops open, and it's one of my older student who is now 22 says, "Hey, check out this piece I just made." My students still text me and share their music, and I thought, Ian, this is perfect because I am presenting today and I'm going to use that for our opening music. So kudos to Ian Brown and his future and all that he is doing. Thanks for that vibe. It made my day. So, oh my gosh, what does tech create really? It creates lifelong learners and creators, as evidenced, right, by what we just heard before this session started. And it creates this pathway for fluid creativity. And that's such an important part of what we want for education. I myself, this is my 35th year in music education, and I still get beautiful messages from people like Ian that say, "Hey, this is what I'm doing." And it's all because of tech has created this fluid environment for us to share. And we are here, and it is forever. And it doesn't matter what age level it is, right? And I want you to think about that for this presentation today. I want you to take whatever I'm teaching and distill it to the age level of how you think you can apply it. And if you're not sure, put it in the chat or reach out to me from the website and I will make sure I get back to you. But I want you to take these large topics and you can distill it down to the developmental age of your students. So I want to tell you what I believe in, and this is why I'm here. I believe in lifelong learning and music education for all students, and I believe in casting the educational net wide so all humans can find themselves in and through music. And I believe and know that music is a creative and rigorous academic subject, and with creativity and critical thinking, music improves the human condition through a personal expression that defines our individual and collective experience, humanity, and culture. And this all comes back to lifelong learning. That's an important part because lifelong learning really is about where the trajectory is. It's no longer like how I went to school, oh, we have a concert. No, it's about that lifelong picture and how do we prepare them for whatever is next. And it's with these tools we get to instill and create independence of learning, right? Where the interests of the students are the center, where they become internally motivated because they get to make the choices. And whatever grade, again, it doesn't matter. And it's really about us instilling that possibility from early on until they leave us. And then they maybe text us later in life, right? Again, we want internal motivation, and it can be motivated by technology. So if we have lifelong learners and participants in music, then we've done our job. So I'm going to get you through 12 tech tips. In between, I have thrown some ideas and concepts that will talk about how technology will influence those or even define the why. But let's get started right into this. First of all, if we look at performance skills, I want to know that it's not just about a large ensemble, but it's about the individual and the ensemble. And the individual skills, most of what relies on the brain of the student is their social emotional well-being, right? Their SEL connection to it, their habits of mind, how they collaborate, how they persist, what is their brain telling them as they're playing. These individual habits that we can intentionally embed and integrate in everything we do will help make them a stronger person because it talks about growth mindset and it really helps them develop a level of ability to create and expound and expand who they are as listeners, right? Who they are as creators and players. So thinking about their personal playing, they're listening to themselves, they're reflecting about what they hear, their technique is called in, and what aspects are technical for them and what aspects aren't expressive to them. Their personal playing really is based on how hard they have worked. And in that is embedded, do they have the perseverance to still come forward? Right? And this concept of expression and technique coming together to become that stronger musician really relies on the individual to have the wherewithal to understand who they are as a person. We can give that through technology because we can invite them to reflect. We can invite them to understand, and we'll talk about that in the tools. But think about that in the larger picture. So not only do we have individual, but obviously we have ensemble skills and performance. And ensemble skills are also built upon the intrapersonal skills, right? The between and within skills of who we are as humans, their ability to collaborate and work together, their ability to understand and converse, their idea of growth mindset, and the concept that we want to teach them listening skills. So how can technology come in and help with listening skills? All the elements, rhythm, pitch, timbre, tone, including intonation, technique, all of these concepts that we use inside an ensemble. So as we go through these tech tips today and how we can integrate and improve performance skills, I want you to think about this as an individual performer, as a larger ensemble. And I mean age grade 2 all the way up, or grade 1 all the way up into collegiate level, because we're really looking at what is happening inside this student and how does that apply within, and then how does that apply into something larger, no matter what the age is. Okay, so here we go. Number 1 is digital portfolios. All the way through, yes, yes, yes. We need to keep track of what they are doing, either by video or audio, by classwork, by reflections, by peer comments and documentation, right? This whole concept of documenting what they do and showing that's not just a one and done performance type, but really is it, or one and done, I've learned this, check it off and take the test, but really is about this constant trajectory of growth towards something larger. I don't know what that larger is for the students. It could be that you're working on standards-based learning and you've got this rubric with proficiency scales identified and you're working towards this and they're documenting their growth. Or maybe it's really about them looking in and going, you know, I haven't really done so much. My documentation of I'm right here. I haven't done so much. I had that numerous times when I was teaching in the high school level, my last 10 years of teaching. Prior to that, I taught K-8 for 22 years. And in high school, the students would talk about the realities. I am growing, or I'm struggling right here. I haven't done anything. So how do we hold on to the beautiful process of growth and the realities of up and down? Because it's never, ever just a straight arrow up. Might be 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So you create audio. You can use the multiple platforms that are available. You can record students on NoteFlight. You can hold that audio and have them reflect back on it later. And then you can use that for them to think about and compare to it later on and say, have I grown? Record it again. What's possible? Use video, thinking about all of them as a performer, as the whole performer, the whole body. What are they stating to their audience with their face, with their body, their presentation, their body language? Throw in the classwork, and not just the best stuff, right? We want everything that shows all their growth. So these digital portfolios then can carry with them how fantastic they get to carry with them up in the cloud and reflect. And you can put it by age level or by grade level, age 10, or maybe 5th grade, or maybe 3rd grade. And they continue to throw in things like that. Within a school district, you can have that trajectory and the students can call those things back. And you can put things and reflections in there for them to talk back and forth. I am huge on learning management systems, as far as the learning management system that's going to be best meet the needs of all your students and how you can communicate through fluid process. So anytime you can use an LMS, a learning management system, that's going to get you messaging back and forth with students and giving feedback, that's the number one thing. And then also, let's be real. We've got parents that want to know what the students are doing, right? And they might call and say, hey, how come so-and-so has this grade? We'll say, well, you know, I see in their digital portfolio, this is what I'm seeing and this is what I'm missing. Or look at how wonderful this is and this is why I have this grade. So it also provides a great evidence of learning for you. And I think that's really important, that the students are now seeing that grades aren't subjective to what we're thinking about the behavior. No, it's really based on what evidence of learning are they showing in their portfolio. So think about digital portfolios in any platform that you use, holding on to audio, holding on to video, and thinking about using those to document their learning. Okay, so here comes recording. And you're going to find that these tips kind of intertwine together. Nothing ever stands in isolation. But let's think about using the recording features of a technology platform in NoteFlight, for example. I envision perfectly in tune ensembles. I envision, and that means for singing and or playing, right? And that means for recorder, or that means for beginning trumpet, or that means for advanced into the higher levels. Can you imagine if we had students practicing not just against a tuner in itself and taking the note out of a melodic line, but really taking a pitch within a melodic line and listening to see what the pitch sounds like. And I'm thinking about now that we have this recording feature in Noteflight, when if they have a melodic line there and they know they've got a couple problematic pitches, even if it's 3 pitches they're playing, what are the pitches in comparison? And they can talk about it and look and listen to themselves. They can look at the recording, see where it falls, listen to how it's happening, and then make the adjustments. Every instrument is different. That's a variable. I don't care what it is. And every person creating music, either by voice or by instrument, is different. And so they get to learn how their body and how their instrument, their voice or their instrument is working. And so by recording and looking at the intonation of their pitches, you improve performance skills. And also by expression. Nothing like making a recording of something that's very, very flat and has no melodic or direction or has no dynamic drive. We get to talk about that. Where's the motion created in this through dynamics? Where's the expression that this particular composer has? Or if it's a student's piece that they're playing, where would you like to move this piece? We get to ask really great questions when we have a recording. And that is with a video or without a video, right? Because we can look at it and really listen and pull it apart and ask questions around it. That leads me into assessing. So if the students are using their work to assess their recordings, this can be by individual at any age level, because you can record it and throw it up into a folder and or put it on a learning management system and unlabel who it was by or from and really talk about it. And or you can have the entire ensemble recording and say, hey all, this is the ensemble recording we just played, and tell us what we need to fix. Or maybe you've got a backtrack playing. I can imagine a score. You've got one of the accompaniment parts of a score playing, and maybe you're inviting the flutes to all play one melodic line. Listen to it, compare it. Again, think about what this is doing for expression, what this is doing for movement of the piece, and it drives the ensemble to listen in a different way. And I think that listening is really important because they can also talk about their growth and what they need to do, right? Instead of us carrying the cognitive load, in assessment, our ideal is we throw the cognitive load on the students in a lovely way by questioning and by inquiry, and we ask them questions and they get to process. So it's not a yes, no, do it as we go, but it's, let me think about this. Let me get back to you and let's talk about this. That documents the process of their growth, and they can talk about their growth over time, as I mentioned in the first tip. And it really supports the reflections. And I'll talk about this later on in the standards section that I'm doing. But reflections are how we get to know what students are thinking, right? I always think of, children's art when we're first starting out, and the very young child will draw something and we don't know what it is, but you'll say, oh, tell me about your picture. And then as they tell you about this picture, you get to know more about the student and what they're trying to show you. Sometimes that very question is important in music. Tell me what you're trying to express. Tell me where you're trying to go. Tell me how does this fit in? And the students get to reflect about that because that helps make them the purveyors of decisions instead of the conductor or the class teacher saying, okay, we're doing this, we're rehearsing this and this and this, and we're going here. When we continue to tell them what to do, they don't have that chance to think about what they get to do for themselves. Again, we're headed towards lifelong learning. Can you imagine in a recording section where you put up 3 or 4 examples of listening for the students that they've created and their peers give feedback to one-on-one? And through that, we can talk about etiquette and how we do that. And I'll talk more about that. But think about peer reflections, assessments, improving intonation and expression. All of these will enhance performance skills. And again, not just as an ensemble, but as an individual, because performance skills as an individual increase when you feel more confident about what you're doing. If you know where you're headed and you have an idea of where you're headed, you get to think about that process and it makes it more intentional. And the intentionality in learning is ideal for everything. Okay, tip number 3, composing. I love composition. Ian Brown played his piece at the very, I got Ian Brown's piece to play at the very beginning. I'm a fan of it because it's, where else do you get to teach the whole, the gestalt of all music? And I'm for that in ensembles as well. And I don't care what age it is, because inside every human is a melody somewhere, and we just have to reveal that melody. So how can we teach as an art form separately and as an art form and within our ensembles? So let's think about this. You've got a piece of music, and you don't have to play it A to the end or the introduction to the coda. Think about, by maintaining the integrity of the piece, how can you open up one of the sections and say, okay, everyone, on note flight, let's look at, we've got this 16 measures. What can we do here for a 16 measure break? If you've kept the integrity of that piece and you want the students to understand that piece and understand rhythm patterns and understand scales of the pitch of what we're doing, of the home tone, how incredible if students could add their own portions to this. I think that would be beautiful. And then you can imagine this: the main melodic line, someone actually composes a counter melody to it, and you invite them to play that with a piece. I can also envision a letter to the composer that says, oh my gosh, we've taken your piece, we love this. We have a clarinetist who's composed a counter melody. We're going to repeat the A section and B section. How would you feel about this? And then the clarinetist would like to play his counter melody over it. What do you think? And then send the recording back to them, or send the sheet music to them that they've composed. I can imagine that conversation would create a door to a composer that students might not ever experience. So think about and I don't care again what age level, composition is a part of everything that we do as creative human beings. And we just have to slowly open that door for everyone. I can also imagine, if you have a given melody, have them create a rhythmic accompaniment for it, have them create even a melodic accompaniment for it, have them look at it and think, okay, I would like to add more percussion here. So you could highlight the main melody in note flight, for example, and then you could determine what other percussion parts you'd like to have right there, and have them go for it and start composing. Talk about complementary parts, talk about how different timbres and pitches of instruments can be heard differently, take them into the score, show them what the score looks like. I mean, I think back to how I experienced my ensemble time. Now, it was many years ago, but I never saw a score unless I happened to go up to my director's music stand and open it up. I mean, now we get to project the score and they get to hear and see all the possibilities. So I'm thinking that they can start to see the puzzle piece of it all, so they don't see themselves in isolation. Another great way to use recording is over chord structures. We can have a chord structure of a melodic section and have them practice some of the notes that are passing that are very troublesome. It can be kind of an etude. You could also do this, we'll talk about this in improv, but where you're working on improv, open up a chord structure, download that as an MP3, and then have that on your learning management system, and anyone can play it. In fact, they could start to hum along of what maybe improv might be. And there's sequence to that, but think about what you can do over a chord structure. Maybe you have an incredible piece of music that you can distill down to the basic chord structure, and you can put that chord structure inside note flight, and you can have them listen to it, and they can start to hum their part that they normally play by whatever instrument, or they normally sing over it, so they can start to feel it internally and how their part fits in with the structure of the piece. I can also imagine from note and flight pulling a piano part, and then you could invite students to take the top line and transpose it to their right instrument, and they get to play that as a solo part. Have the piano, the bass line playing, and then they could actually play with the piano part in the correct key. They could actually then add they could record it, because they're going to be talking about the expressive elements in it. So not to look at piano parts as just piano parts, but for me as really a distilled score in a way that is accessible to many people. And you can teach them how to read chord charts. You can teach them how to do that as music theory. Nothing like embedded theory. Gone are the days of music theory class. For my world, I just feel like teaching theory in isolation is not real. And it's like learning geometric theorems out of real work. So how do we get them to do this inside, so that, can you imagine 20 years down the line, they download a piano part and they start creating music with themselves? Also, a note flight, take a choral or a band piece. If it's a choral piece, change the lyrics, add lyrics. Have them reflect on the music and what the key is and what the tempo is and what the lyrics might be for this. Make it relevant to what they're learning. Maybe edit and change a part, learn to perform. Maybe you've got a stellar player who would like to help a beginning player in another group and say, hey, I can take this main piece and I could water it down a little bit, and I would like to help the beginners. Maybe you have an ensemble because you might have had a poor counselor who didn't really do the master schedule well, and you are in high school or middle school, and you've got an ensemble of beginners to advanced. I have seen that. And then what you need to do is figure out, how am I going to teach this class with this range of students? Okay, I've got the hard part. We get the flute player in there to put the part in, and then maybe distill it down to half notes or quarter notes, or just to begin to help them understand it. So think about differentiation of instruction. It's a really great, think about universal design for learning and how we can support all learners by taking a piece of music and making it accessible for everyone. Accessibility. Anytime you take a piece of music and anytime you start composing and arranging, and I should have put arranging up on top there, anytime you take arranging with that, it really is about accessibility and about student-driven choices, because they get to see themselves as creating that music and then making that music come to life versus a composer or a situation outside of themselves, a black note on white paper that's in front, but they don't know the internal side of it. So let's make that internal part of who they are. If you're a musician, you can be a composer. Absolutely. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you before we get to the next tip about making thinking visible. So much of what we do in music is ephemeral. It's fleeting. We play it, it's gone. Along with those might be the thoughts that are gone with it. So in true assessment, we want to make their thinking visible, in addition to having artifacts of what they're doing. Written artifacts, documented artifacts, recorded artifacts, something that's going to make it concrete. So how do we make their thinking visible and have them share their internal process as concrete so that we have evidence of it and we understand what they're thinking, so that we aren't only grading, right? And ideally, we're co-creating that grade situation, right? It's not us leveling a grade on them, but we're just not thinking about grading what you hear, but oh my gosh, what about that process getting into it? I invite you to rethink about your grading. Is it a performance as an ends, or is it process in how we do this, like standards-based grading? It's moving towards something larger. So think about that process as important as the outcome. Again, this process of mental thought, right, being a part of who these students are, and it results in their outcome. So how do we get them? If they make a mistake, so what were you thinking? Have them think about that. And we get to model that for them. I'm thinking this, I heard this, let me explain this. What do you all think? It does support lifelong learning skills, and this is why. Because we want to have the student as a problem solver, ideally without us. Can you imagine coming into an ensemble? Students have thought these things out and they know the solutions. They don't have to be told. Yes, we teach them how to do that, but we're making it so concrete that they can then reflect back on what they have learned, how they've learned, and go, oh, this reminds me when I was doing this. And they also get to then help their peers with that. Everyone experiences learning. We do every single day. So let's assess it for growth mindset, and let's assess it so that we can really make their thinking visible. Okay, tip number 4, improvisation. I'm a huge fan of improvisation. I don't care what kind of ensemble you teach, and I don't care what age you teach. We should all be improvising in some shape or form. So we can do this through a rhythmic improv and a pitch improv, and I'll share my quick sequence with you. And we can also do it with a melodic improv over a chord structure, which I kind of mentioned earlier. So I can imagine in a rhythmic improv sequence, if you can think about note flight, you provide multiple measures of 2 counts of rhythm, and you ask them to notate an answer, a short 2-count answer, so question answer. Then you ask them to play that whole question answer measure phrase. Then you expand that to 4 counts, and you expand it to 1 and 2 measures, maybe even 4 measures. So you're thinking larger rhythmic improv, because here's the reality. I have often witnessed students go, yeah, I'm supposed to improvise, but I don't even know what to do. So how do we sequence this using technology that's going to make it really concrete for them? And we know that really quality improv is based on expression. It's based on the quality of the rhythm. And yes, the pitch if it's being harmonically based, but it's really giving them the groundwork in a sequence. People just don't come into that because they're so afraid of it. And this is why, because we've spent so many years reading the black note on the white paper. So how do we get them removed from that, but have them know it so well because they've experienced it on a true articulated level? Think about the rhythmic improv sequence using notation, then do it auditorily as well. And then invite them to share these rhythms using expressive qualities, right? Dynamics, different articulations. How can they play static rhythms with their hands, with different body percussion parts? And I don't care what age, again, maybe they're all on rhythm sticks. Maybe they're using the music stands. I don't know what it is, but I know that music can be created on anything that's percussion. They can even address articulation issues and dynamics. If you want to start working into pitch, use that same sequence, but then you add a single pitch. A single pitch improv with a long rhythmic line will definitely help you isolate dynamics, expression, and articulation, because they get to show their growth through all of this really with just one pitch. And when you hold them to one pitch, they're forced to nail the rhythm, number one. And then they're forced to really think of how they're going to add this pitch and how they're going to move the pitch forward to create movement. So let's think about how we can do this. Now, I want to go back just for a second, because when I'm talking about a single pitch, you might want to structure this within what you are teaching harmonically in your class, so that's not just a random part. Okay, that's really important to note, so that you're embedding this in everything that they do. And then maybe you want to expand it over into a second pitch. And then once they start to see what this looks like, they're looking at rhythm, you can invite them, let's stop looking at the rhythm. You can create question and answer phrases of rhythm on your own, just in the moment, and have them work on that sequence alone without anything written down. Fall to that single pitch, that second pitch, those two pitches, use expression. So they start to really internalize, I can create rhythmic phrases and I can play a pitch over it. I can create rhythmic phrases, I can play two pitches over it. Maybe you expand to the pentatonic. And then you can expand by adding a chord sequence, because sometimes the chord sequence helps them hear the pull and understanding where the home tone or the tonic is. That's really important. So you want to make sure then that you talk about home tone. And if you've got a chord sequence playing through note flight and you've got this chord sequence going, you go, okay, everyone, you've got 8 measures and this is where the chords change, and you can talk about how you hit that and how you move through that. Again, start with one pitch over a chord change, it'll work. And then start to expand, add in the pentatonic, and you have nailed how to teach improv. Eventually get into passing tones, a little bit more advanced, but think about that for improvisation. And what do I mean? Again, for all ensembles, every student should be improvising. If you've got hard rhythms inside a really tough wind ensemble piece, invite them to use those rhythm patterns inside, notate them, and start creating phrases or by ear or just by notation. By ear for improvisation, great. Put the actual rhythms on the board and say, okay, you've got the following patterns, improvise 2 measures. Let's see what we get. So they start to see this rhythm in isolation. And that will help everyone start to understand the concept. Okay. By the way, over the chord sequence, yes, over 1 chord. Yes, you can add 2 chords. Yes, you could have 3. Aaron, just want to confirm that our slides are moving. We're good to go. I'm thinking we're good. Okay. Think we're good to go. Yep, all good. Thanks. Okay, here comes tech tip number 5. So this is using tech for a means for rehearsal and practice. And that means with an individual, and that means as an ensemble. So metronome work, absolutely. Hey, we've got Aaron here from Hal Leonard on. Aaron, do you want to jump in and talk about how you would use a metronome work? Let's see if he's there. I know he's got a lot of other.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, gotcha.
Hey. Yeah, I think in ensembles, just having the metronome on is a great start, but also training the students to know how to use and respond to the metronome. That's always an important one. I've had so many students just having the metronome on in the background, and not trying to relate what they're doing to it at all. you know
Right.
so a lot of times just having a little bit of training on what the metronome can do, and at advanced levels even trying to put it on different beats. I know teaching the jazz ensemble, having the metronome going on 2 and 4 really
Oh,
starts to ingrain that feel for them and starts to help them develop even more in terms of the style. So a lot of great ways to use even like a simple tool that we all use all the time, but just little training goes a long way, I think, on some of
that's a great
those.
idea. Maybe we can breed an entire generation of people that won't clap on 1 and 3 then. That would
Right.
be cool. Yeah,
Right.
that'd be great. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, let's think about other metronome work. So they've notated maybe their challenging part on note flight. They pulled it apart, and then they start practicing with a slower tempo, and then it gradually increases. And again, talk about the reflection, right? Have them write down what are they doing to improve? What do they need to do to get better? Where is their technique failing them? Or what do they need help with, right? They can tell you exactly where they are when they look at that recording. Also, think about this for intonation. I envision a day where all ensembles have the same timbre and they're all in tune. I can only imagine. But this concept of passing a pitch around the room with the correct pitch can be done one on one, even with a couple students, or 2 on 1, I should say, two with the actual technology. Maybe it's on note flight where they are passing a pitch back and forth, and they can see in the recording. If you just have a concert C repeated over and over and over again, and the student, and I would pick different instruments. Well, maybe not. Maybe the same instruments, maybe 2 flutes back to forth, so they could see where they are and matching each other and expand that group. Maybe it's flute to clarinet and you pull pairs and they start to work. You could actually take their sections and see what's happening within the flute line. And the flute player could work to play it in tune while the clarinet is playing their part underneath it. I see that ensemble, I see that vocally as well. Passing that pitch on with intonation using a device that's going to be able to record and show it. And I know in note flight you can see those pitches so well, it tells you where you're falling, that would be ideal. And that's for all students. Oh my gosh. Beginning recorder students, they can play in tune. I'm a firm believer of that. As well as vocalists, they can sing in tune. So they can take that challenging part, they can increase the tempo, they can have friends say, hey, I'm here. They can discuss where they are in the tempo line. So I'm playing it here. Where are you playing it? How did you get to that tempo? Show me what you're doing. They compare and contrast each other. They can leave each other notes in different platforms. So they can make comments and say, hey, you might want to try this. This is how I got to this tempo. I changed the rhythm pattern and then I went back and read it again. But using the technology as a tool for them to learn from one another, as well as learn how their body is working with the pitches in intonation and as well as rhythm. Okay, and let's pretend that you don't have all the instruments you need from one of your scores. So can you notate that pitch, that part, and can you project that loud enough in your ensemble so that's playing for them? And then the ensemble plays over it. Also for practice, right? They don't have the whole ensemble at home. Maybe you want the horns to hear what is happening around them. And so you notate the other parts. They take that audio and then they go home and practice their part within that. So you can have them listen to how their part fits. Because let's be real, when you go home, you're in isolation. You don't get that whole ensemble feel around you to hear how you fit. And so much of ensemble performance skills are like, how do we fit with one another? So how do we transpose that? How do we take that learning moment from the classroom and have it outside of the school so they can get that to hear other parts? Okay, we are on slide 6. So back to composition again, because I can't imagine not doing it ever, but there are many composition opportunities and theory challenges. And I put, oh my gosh, theory applications, because let's stop teaching theory outside as a separate subject and let's make it inside so it's real and applicable. Hey everyone, we've got a chord structure over here. Let's open up this piece. Where do you want to repeat it? Great, let's look at the chord. Let's look at all the pitches we have here and let's analyze this. What chord do you have? I can only imagine where I would have been later on in my collegiate life if someone had asked me to do that. I was literally just sit and play and not making real many decisions. They would tell us if I was flat or sharp, but they wouldn't tell me anything about it. And then when it came down to understanding theory, it's like, oh, yeah, you don't need to do that. We just got to practice because our concert's next week. But I think it is part of it. I do think it should be that whole musician that we're teaching to. Again, lifelong musicians, lifelong thinking. If I weren't here, can they still carry on? Can they still move forward? And those theory challenges. So let's think about this. You take a melody from a piece that they are currently working on, and you have them compose that. You take that melody and you put that in Note Flight. Then you invite students to create a chord structure underneath it. Give it a limit. Otherwise, you might find all 7 chords of a major or minor scale underneath there. Give them a limit how many chords they can use and which ones they can use. Have them voice the chords, listen to the different sounds. Once you have it, have them play it back to the class. Then you're going to pass that same harmony off now only. Make a copy of it, delete the melody, pass the harmony off to another student group, and they get to create a new melody for it. And you can do that switching all the way back and forth. And you can invite the students to listen to this. You could end up with a group of students who want to put a piece together. Not only that, maybe you've accidentally created polyphony, right? You've accidentally created new lines that fit together in different ways. So think about composition games and challenges and theory challenges that are going to be using Noteflight or using your technology in such a way that it becomes embedded, and then they walk out knowing the piece of music that they're playing in a different way. And this is for all ensembles, right? And I'm talking, oh my gosh, Orff ensembles all the way up into any vocal or instrumental ensemble. Some might say, I don't have time for this. So I would submit that we look at what we're doing in towards our concerts and say, maybe it's one less piece, but I'm going to go deep in on this next piece. So it's going to take a little bit more time. One less concert piece to perform, but look what I'm showing here. And part of your concert is what the students are creating. Every parent wants to see their child called out and said, and I just want to thank so-and-so student because they composed this section, and we have emailed back and forth with the composer, and we've kept the integrity of piece, and thank you so much for this new harmonic line that we've created. So think about that as what we're highlighting, because all of our artifacts define what our program is. And many of our artifacts are our concerts and our performances. What are your concerts and performances saying about what you teach, what you want to teach, and about who you want your students to be? So sharing compositions, absolutely. Okay.
And I
Yeah.
was just going to add too that does so much for just creating student voice and giving them some feeling of power and some feeling of belonging too. That's such a great idea.
Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about student voice content. I'm so glad you brought that up, Erin, because that's all about personalized learning. That's huge. And student-centered work. I love that. Okay, so the collaborative process, performance and ensemble skills all deal with collaborative process. How are you working well with others? These are habits of mind. These are social emotional skills. How are you using technology to do this? Describe your collaborative process. Invite students to discuss and show their growth and who they are as a collaborator. We all know individuals that have struggled in this in any of our classrooms. I'm sure as I say that right now, everyone has someone popping in because no one's really taught people how to collaborate. And the old model of just sit and get, okay, it's not really collaboration. That's really like compliance at best, right? So how do we teach them collaboration skills so it's a lifelong skill? Because I'm going to tell you right now, that is teaching to transfer the rest of their life, because we don't live in isolation in anything that we do. So I really implore upon you to really think about this concept of real world work and teaching it through technology, leaving appropriate comments back and forth. My biggest fear is that our texting level comes out as how people throw in comments from social media, and that would be a shame. This is our chance to say, hey, this is how you could reply to this. This is how you could wish for something else. I wonder if, or I wish that we could do this. What about this? Really, collaborative skills comes from words that we use and how we work together, in addition to how we play together. It all is part of that climate of how we collaborate. Use tools of technology to use this, in addition to working and composing together online, right? I can see it right now in Noteflight. I can see it how maybe even sharing a piece of music from one of the libraries and how you collaborate to create a wonderful piece together. Intentional teaching of collaboration will make the actual ensemble stronger, not just by rules that we create, but intentional teaches. Oh my gosh, Ian Brown is in the chat. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we had to include something specific. Yes. Thank you, Ian. And about that creative process, that's so important. Thank you for putting that in there. Okay. So now I'm up to tech tip number 7. I might get pushback on this, but here are some big words. Use big words. Do not leave this up to AP music theory. Teach it all to your students because it exists in your music, right? And there is nothing wrong within middle school talking about, oh, we have 2 independent melodic lines that are working together. Hello, it's called polyphony, right? So talk about it, but how cool to experience it in notation. I'm even talking about a meme you might know. Na 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 na, right? Love, right? We so me, right? We use that, and here is this little melody that it's been heard many, many times. Can you create another melody for it? And let's see what that would be. Or Twinkle Twinkle. Here's the main melody of Twinkle Twinkle. Can you create another melody that works above that? And can you see what that would be? Or, like I'd mentioned earlier, let's take a melodic line from a pop tune from the pop library, or from any piece from the Essential Elements books, any piece, a piece from a band or choral piece you're working on. Here's your main melody. Let's write polyphony for it, 2 independent lines. I can almost hear that individual singer coming out on a microphone to sing that additional line, or a duet that gets created because of that. Talk about these words, right? These are important parts of music that I have just seen relinquished to, oh, passing the AP music theory exam. It exists in everything that we play. Let's give them the meat. Here's the deal. We all have concrete, specific academic vocabulary. Every subject matter does. And when we teach it, as is it important, just like all other subject matter does, the students walk with it. Concrete, specific, academic vocabulary, engaging with it authentically on a program that is really going to help us have them make meaning with it. That's very important. Okay, here is tech tip number 8. I love this. I can see it now. It's solo and small ensemble night at Chavez Middle School. And what the students have done to get there, they've gone into the Note Flight libraries, they found music with friends, and they themselves are playing it and creating it. Maybe they're playing the melodic line to a piano part. Maybe they are arranging a piece. They each have a time limit. They've got time to work on. They can notate it. They can create improvisations. It is up to them how they want to create this day, this night. Videotape it, put it up, peer feedback, assessment, notation. You are going to cover every single standard with this, I'm just saying. And then you get to have them really share and own what music is, right? Let me talk about this ownership. This is really important. Ownership of music creates motivation. Ownership of learning creates deep learning and motivation. That deep learning and that motivation makes people lifelong learners. If we can do anything to ensure that we are creating lifelong participants and learners and creators of music, or well-educated patrons of music, you have contributed to the culture of your community. The arts are indicator species. That means this. Just like a tree frog is an indicator species of a forest. If the tree frogs are dying, the forest is dying. If the arts are dying, the community is dying. Our job is to make sure that our students are independent enough without us, and they can use all of these tools so they are either patrons or participants and creating and contributing to culture. And the culture that's thriving tells us the community is thriving. Be a part of this so that you can leave the legacy of their creativity and what is yet to come. It's very important. So this might sound small, solo and ensemble night, but play that sucker out about 20 years and you've created independent lifelong learners. You're giving them tools on how to create beyond them. Okay, here we go. Rhythmic and melodic dictation. I'm a big fan of dictation at every age level. My students know this. We would run this all the time, and it was so important because it really helped them understand music when they got to it. And I would always embed this within what was going to come in their work. So if we had challenging rhythm patterns, I was always making sure that was part of our rhythmic dictation. And I sequenced up to it, obviously. Same thing with melodic dictation, because we want to build and instill with them the ears and how to listen for this and how to play things. I imagine on Note Flight, you can actually have this rhythmic dictation already created. And then you literally just press play and have it pushed out over the speakers in your room. And maybe you play one measure and you have 8 measures of silence, or you can move the cursor as you need to. But the reality is you're going to have it done for them, and you don't have to memorize everything you're doing and have it notated. You've already pre-notated it. So you're creating rhythmic dictation drills for them that can easily transfer to all skills. And if they want to start creating rhythmic dictation that the students in their class wants to create, that's even better, because then you're getting them a part of this learning process. Let them be the teacher. Absolutely let them be the teacher. Same thing with melodic dictation. Start with 1 pitch, adding 2, expand to 3, and you can start to see it working from 2 counts to 4 counts if you're in 4/4, or 3 counts if you are in 3/4. Think about the different meters as well. So it's not just the 4/4, the common time. Okay. I'm a big fan of that. Here we go. National standards. Everything that I do is standards based. So if you want to know how does technology fit into the national standards, well, let's look at it. Creating, performing, responding, and connecting to music. It's all embedded. If you only do one part of the whole musician pie, they're only getting one slice. But when we invite students to create and respond and connect, you're creating ownership, you're expanding what that whole musician looks like, and you're giving them the powers and the tools to know that they are more than an outcome of a performance, that they are more than that part that they are playing. So I want you to think about in creating, we're generating ideas. Yes, technology does that. We're having them choose music in a library that's a digital library. Yes, they select and develop musical ideas. They tell you what the purpose is for. They refine in assessment. They evaluate the performances, they're playing, they're recording, their excerpt, whatever they're going to be assessed on, their playing portion. And they evaluate one another. They share with one another. That when they're performing, the music that they selected gets to be performed. So you're saying, yeah, your decisions make a difference. You get to analyze the structure of music, absolutely, in score form, yes, or in improv form. They, again, refine, evaluate, assess. Adding expression, very important, right? What do I need to improve upon to create movement here towards the climax of the piece? All of this great type of understanding. Responding and connecting to music. This is where it lies, because this is how it makes it personal. And as Erin said, how do we develop that personal choice, that self-efficacy part that really is important for students to develop? So they synthesize this information, they take it all in, those higher level thinking skills that they're going to reflect on. They're going to choose pieces, they're going to reflect on the connections, they're going to respond to their peers, respond to the ensemble. They can do it on a digital learning management system. They can leave notes for one another. They can do it in real time. Here is my phrase that I created on this platform. Can you listen to it? Here's my video. Now here's me playing it live. What did I do better? Think of all of this based on the national standards. That's a whole musician picture. That whole musician picture is that larger trajectory. Keep that larger trajectory in your mind's eye. Okay. Tech tip number 10 is practicing or even creating excerpts. Find a challenging section of a piece of music, whatever age level, whatever ensemble. Create a practice document, a note flight for it. Isolate that, right? And let them play it at different speeds. Think about how they can take it apart. Think about how they could take those rhythms apart and apply them to their own compositions. What is challenging, have them work with one another. You can set up a note flight doc that's going to even look at the different beaming sections of the notes. Erin, do you have a moment to chime in about the beaming section of notes? You might be getting another webinar up right now.
I
Oh,
do. Yeah, sorry. That's perfect timing. Yeah, I think I've been in situations where the beaming was really different than students were used to, or maybe the groupings, or even just unfamiliar meter. And so sometimes just rewriting it, especially I'm a percussionist, so a lot of times the books that I've used will try to trick you on purpose, adding extra eighth note rests or something to help solidify the students' counting. And just sometimes rewriting it in a more familiar way is really useful. It's just some simple thing, but it really can make a big difference in terms of the student's understanding.
Thank you. Yeah, and beat inclusive notation. Man, once we can teach them that, it is a great idea to help them
Yeah.
understand that. Thank you. Okay,
Welcome.
tech tip number 11, sight reading. Create sight reading excerpts. Take little parts of the little melodic cells from what they're learning, put it in there. Sight singing, sight reading, right? Challenges. Have students write their own challenges for one another, identify the key, identify key patterns you see in a line, break apart what sight reading is. Sometimes people just get it and they start to sight read and they don't know what to do. So break it apart for them, sequence it as a skill. Sight reading pitch and melody, and then singing and playing this piece once they've got it down. So you can create a level of literacy, again, as part of the whole musician. And here is tech tip number 12. We're getting very close to the end. Listening skills through examples and intentional work. And I really mean listening skills. Who we are as a performer, who others are as a performer. How do we intentionally teach with this? What do you hear? Have a discussion. Sometimes we get so engrossed in playing that we actually lose what we're hearing. So think of this. Invite several students to play a recording, and don't have them tell them who they are or if they want to be identified, and say, okay, let's give feedback to this. What do we hear? Or have someone intentionally make mistakes and create an audio recording. What do we hear? Again, active engagement moves the cognitive load from us telling them to asking questions what they hear, and it asks those students to come forth as active practitioners and reflective learners. So we are really moving towards teaching listening skills with technology. EE music class, oh my gosh, think of all the beautiful pieces of music that are available on that platform that you can teach listening skills to. What do you hear? What are the instruments? They need this vocabulary. Invite everyone to share music they've created. What do you hear? Asking questions, structuring instruction as active inquiry, right? And through inquiry, and the where we're in, excuse me, and that is where we're engaging students for higher level thinking skills. Structured inquiry is where we really know where the answer is. You got to get them there. Open inquiry is like it's an open question. What do you hear? Let's listen to all the possibilities. So it's kind of like playing a music detective game. Invite them to do that. Think of two duets, a flute and a clarinet, both playing the same section at the same time, and identify what each other needs. Have them expand to not just listening one part, but two parts, and have them pull it apart. How does the piece even fit within what we are trying to create? Okay. And, Aaron talked about this earlier, but this is so huge for me. Personalized learning. There are 4 attributes of personalized learning: learner-centered work. Students have voice and choice. They co-create their work. We ask them to be a part of this, teacher and student, or not even teacher. I'm a student too. How do we create a social construct around this? So they are learning collaboratively. And who are they as a learner, as a performer, as an ensemble member? That self-discovery is so important. In quick overview, why digital tools? Because no knowledge is independent of the meaning, ever. And so we can give them the skills to use this because it creates fluency, it creates ease of sharing, and integrates all aspects of performing and creating music, that whole musician, creates a growth mindset that we can make errors and improve and grow, sets the student up for using industry standard tools, because this is what's happening. They're using them. Expands our musical pathways and lifelong learning. And I'm closing with the World Economic Forum goals because this drives everything I do in addition to my beliefs. These are the top skills required for 2025. 4 from the World Economic Forum. When you look at these skills, think about how technology plays into each and every one of them and how music fits. Nothing stands in isolation, right? No knowledge is independent of the meaning. So what is our greater meaning? What is our greater drive? How do we use technology to increase knowledge and understanding and create lifelong independent learners? I will be sharing this slide deck with Aaron, and hopefully we'll get this put up as well. And I just want to thank everyone so much. And thank you for everyone for participating and being on here on a Wednesday afternoon in the middle of September 15th. So other links, please visit Hal Leonard. I want to thank Danielle. I want to thank Aaron and John for this opportunity. And you can reach out to me in any way. We'll get this on Notefly as well so that you can get a hold of that. If you want to find me on Twitter, here I am. And feel free to connect with me on that social media platform. And I'm happy to DM you for anything. My best to you. Ian, thank you so much for sharing that music today. You made my day as an educator. Grateful. Bye bye.